amounts of philanthropy or services to business have actually been given. And I think this is, as I say, in the vast majority of cases, that is true. It's just that they've gone unseen, and the honours, because somebody's given to a political party, hit the headlines.
The concern has to be, I suppose, for anyone who's got an honour, like yourself, and who might be getting an honour, that the system is seen to be tainted by some of the more extreme examples.
Oh, there's no question, and that I mentioned earlier on, that this is the tragedy, is that we want, society should continue to reward people for all the work and service they give to communities right across the country, whatever they may happen to be. And that is important. It's really, I think, the part of the system which we can be rightly proud of. But there does need to be a tightening up to ensure that people do believe that people are getting honours for the right reasons.
Lord Hayward, thank you very much for coming on the programme. Listeners with a penchant for obscure details about royal weddings may well remember that Prince Harry had to secure permission from his grandmother, the late Queen, to marry whilst in possession of a beard. This is because serving officers and soldiers in the British Army have been forbidden for at least a century now to allow facial hair to sprout freely. But now, good news for those who think a beard goes well with a uniform. The Ministry of Defence has confirmed to the BBC that the ban is gone and furry faces will now be allowed. Alan Withy is a senior lecturer in history at the University of Exeter and author of Concerning Beards, Facial Hair, Health and Practice in Britain. Good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon.
Can you help me out a little bit here? Do you know when beards, facial hair were banned by the British Army?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because the word banned has been used a lot in the press today. Now, I'm not convinced that it ever was banned. Now, I'm not a military historian, and I'm aware I'm playing semantics here, but I think it's more the case that the shaving was a requirement of the uniform. So it's not so much that the beard is banned, it's more that being clean-shaven was the regulation appearance. Because I don't think, and I'm sure one of your listeners might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was ever a formal regulation or order that banned the wearing of beards. There certainly was one standing order that mandated that the British soldiers had to wear moustaches before 1916, but I don't think the other way around.
And have you divined yet as to what the, let's call it a restriction, if it's not a ban on beards, was about? Was it about making soldiers pretty, or was it, as some people have said, about a tight fit for a gas mask?
Yeah, I mean, the gas mask thing has come in, fits quite well with, say, the last 30 or 40 years or so. But if we go way back, let's say into the 1700s, it's actually more to do with fashion and masculine appearance, because in the 18th century, no guys are wearing beards. It's seen as uncouth and rustic. If we think of the Georgian gentleman, they're clean-shaven and very neat and elegant. So soldiers are kind of following that as part of the uniform requirement. But that all turns on its head around about the mid-19th century, of course, when the beard fashion is actually started by soldiers who were wearing the beards out in the Crimea, and they come back and they become these sort of heroes of manliness.
And do you rejoice, briefly, at the return of furry faces to the British Army?
For a beards historian, I'm remarkably ambivalent to it. I mean, I'm surprised it's kind of lasted this long. We think of the era of free choice, but men in various forces, even if we go back to the mid-19th century, the police forces in Dublin and Glasgow are petitioning to be allowed to wear them. So guys like to have choice. And it's just, I think now, as we move into, arguably more enlightened age perhaps, but the freedom is being given back to them a little bit, but it doesn't always have to be this cliche.
Alan, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Alan Withy there on beardedness. Let's go back to our main story this lunchtime. The statement from the Democratic Unionist Party as we came on air. The party chairman has received a letter from Sir Geoffrey Donaldson MP confirming he's been charged with allegations of an historical nature, indicating that he's stepping down as leader of the Democratic Unionist Party with immediate effect. Enda McClafferty is our Northern Ireland political editor, rushing back to work, so I think you're on the telephone. And it's a big moment, isn't it, for Northern Irish politics and for UK politics?
Yes, Johnny, it takes a lot to shake the battle-hardened nature of the political landscape in Northern Ireland, but this certainly has today. This has left the DUP party numb. It has left a lot of other politicians in Northern Ireland scratching their heads because nobody saw this coming. This happened yesterday. We understand Sir Geoffrey Donaldson was arrested at his home yesterday morning along with that 57-year-old woman. He spent most of yesterday in police custody being questioned by detectives, and then late last night he was charged with historic sexual offences. That wasn't made public until this morning. The PSNI didn't disclose his identity, but it was pretty clear. People started to piece things together because Sir Geoffrey Donaldson cancelled all his social media platforms. Then we heard about this meeting of the DUP officer team happening this morning, very much in crisis mode, and then the statement emerged from the party chairman shortly after that, confirming, as you say, that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson notified the party that he is now being charged with historic offences, and for that reason he was stepping down as party leader. The statement went on to say that his membership of the DUP has now been suspended pending the outcome of the judicial process, and his fellow MP Gavin Robinson, the deputy leader of the DUP, has now assumed control of the party on an interim basis, as what we have been told. But there's no doubt about it, in terms of political earthquakes in Northern Ireland, this is right up there, and that is saying something.
Enda, thank you very much indeed. That was Enda McClafferty, Northern Ireland political editor, giving us the latest update on the news that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has stepped down as leader of the Democratic Unionist Party. One other headline, Metropolitan Police Force says it's continuing its investigation into potential offences at the Post Office over the Horizon IT scandal and has interviewed 2 people under caution. PM is at 5. This is Johnny Diamond, and that's the world at 1:45.
Studio direction was by Holly Palmer. The editor was Sophie Borkham. Any questions comes from Twickenham tonight on the panel. Andrew Griffith for the Conservatives, Labour's Seema Malhotra, Sarah Olney for the Liberal Democrats and Tim Stanley from the Telegraph. That's at 8 o'clock. Now on Radio 4, the final episode in our series charting the evolution of trust. This is The Trust Shift with Oxford University's first Trust Fellow, Rachel Botsman.
I first started getting interested in how trust shapes our lives back in 2005. Most of us didn't yet have smartphones, but there were early signs of the power of new technologies to alter the dynamics of trust in ways we'd never experienced before. From local trust that existed face-to-face in small communities, to institutional trust, where institutions allowed us to scale up and trust strangers in ways that were previously unimaginable, to distributed trust. Distributed trust allowed for new products, games, books and music venues to be crowdfunded by communities. It transformed how we create and exchange content, allowing people to share almost anything, from their photos to their spare rooms, to skills, to their dogs, to even lifts in cars. But it also severely fragmented our information landscape. It interfered with our democratic elections. It allowed the dark web to thrive. And it led to an explosion of alternative currencies. In 2024, we're now embedded in this complex new world of trust. And with nearly 2 decades of hindsight, the problems it has created are stark. We've given a lot of trust and power to the platforms that promise to liberate us from traditional institutions. And in the middle of all this disruption, we're about to enter a new phase of trust, perhaps the most significant of all. This trust shift is so new that I haven't decided what to call it yet. Perhaps auto-sapient trust or agent trust. With the rapid emergence of a new generation of artificially intelligent systems that can make judgments and decisions and generate ideas, the question of who we can trust is one of society's greatest challenges. I'm Rachel Botsman, and this is the final episode of our series exploring the intriguing history of trust. Episode 5, New AI Frontiers. Just like we've seen with previous trust shifts in this series, artificial intelligence requires an enormous trust leap, stepping into the unknown across different areas of our lives, in everything from health to education, military to the law, the arts to transport. It will reshape our lives in ways we can't yet imagine. But behind the exciting innovation and buzz of AI, there are fundamental questions we should be asking of ourselves, tech leaders, and our governance structures right now.
Whenever there's a huge amount of hype about something, my ears prick up and I wonder whether people are asking the right questions.
To help me explore this complex final trust shift, I'm joined by Jack Stilgoe. He's Professor of Science and Technology Studies at University College London, where he teaches on the governance of emerging technologies. He's also part of a new giant research program in Britain called Responsible AI.
When it comes to AI, what I noticed early on is that there were a lot of people presuming that the technology was sort of magical, that there was a sort of imminent battle between humans and robots, and we would get this sort of science fiction question of, can you trust a robot? And as a social scientist, I wanted to try to draw attention to the people. It's not a question really of, do we trust a robot in that sort of science fiction mode? It's a question of, do we trust the people behind the technologies, even if those people are trying to keep themselves hidden.
A lot of Jack's work has been about self-driving cars.
If you have a new technology like a self-driving car, if you're trying to get people to jump in your self-driving car and show the world how amazing it is, you absolutely want people to trust in that very superficial way that the thing is going to do what you think it's going to do. But there's a far more complicated aspect to trust in that technology, which is that people will also wonder how the thing works, and when it goes wrong, do we know why it's gone wrong? Why the thing has been brought onto public streets, often without permission as citizens, and they will wonder what the thing is for. So who actually is likely to benefit from self-driving cars? One question that engineers can't answer, that social scientists would be intensely interested in when it comes to self-driving cars, is how safe is safe enough? At what level will society trust that this technology's benefits outweigh its risks?
San Francisco, California has become kind of ground zero for self-driving vehicle testing. Last August, the city passed a controversial resolution that made it legal for two companies to provide robo-taxi services 24/7. And residents have made it clear what they think.
In some cases, there have been real outbursts of resistance, where people have, in a recent case, set fire to one during a parade. The self-driving vehicle industry would say that those were just cases of vandalism, in just the same way as people graffiti subway trains. I think there's something else going on, which is I think that the technology symbolizes a particular form of imposition to some citizens. I think some people see the technology not so much as dangerous, but as exacerbating inequalities that really characterize some of North California's culture. The Luddites were making really important political arguments while also symbolically breaking machines. And they were making arguments about labour rights and about the sharing of benefits from innovations. I think it's a mistake to presume that it's just, rampant violence.
When we don't trust something or someone, the human response is, put me back in control. Let's dive deeper into this issue of control. It's helpful to ask, who or what are we ceding control to? In the early days of what was then called the Facebook, there's a now well-known story of Mark Zuckerberg chatting to a friend on Instant Messenger. When they asked him how he managed to persuade all these people to give up their data, he replied, "They trust me, the dumb." You can guess the next word. If you think about your most used apps and platforms, the ones you turn to most days, I'm curious, do you ever think about if you really trust them? Sometimes we use a certain technology because we want to fit in, or we use it out of convenience, curiosity, or even ignorance. But that's a very different thing to trust.
There's a danger that we mistake people's use of a technology, or even people's enthusiasm for a technology, as trust.
And so what about the new wave of AI entrepreneurs and innovators who have the power to radically shape our futures?
The first thing I would say is that social scientists, like me, avoid prediction. But one of the things we know about new technologies is that we are always wrong, and that the people predicting futures for technologies are normally trying to sell you something. I think one thing that we can learn, though, from the history of technology is that the stated objectives and the effects that we can see on the surface tend not to represent the way that these technologies end up changing the world.
Entrepreneurs often quickly lose control over the path their inventions take once released into the world. The legendary social scientist Robert Merton was way ahead of his time when in 1936 he came up with the theory of unanticipated consequences of new technologies. From the invention of the microwave, where they never thought about how it would disrupt the family meal, to how the bicycle would help liberate women, to the like button, where we didn't foresee its effects on mental health and self-esteem. It raises an important trust question. When we make a decision today, how much should we worry about the consequences that might take decades or even centuries to emerge? I love that Merton has provided an old framework that is so relevant to thinking about a new problem. When you think about artificial intelligence, what is the unanticipated consequence that worries you the most?
Almost by definition, if it's unanticipated, then I can't mention it now. But I would say my sort of meta worry, anything you can do, I can do meta, would be that it's in the interests of the people developing the technology not to anticipate the consequences. That's what I worry about. The AI people develop their systems and release them out into the world, and then it's up to society to work out what the consequences are, to decide if they're happy with those consequences. So there's a massive asymmetry there that we seem to be sort of happy to let innovators off the hook.
You trust AI to do what?
I don't trust AI. In some cases, I might trust the people behind AI, which means that I might make use of AI where I can clearly see that it has benefits above and beyond the alternatives. One reason I would be more likely in the UK to trust AI in healthcare is that I know that it will be developed in the context of a trustworthy institution, the National Health Service, who are interested not just in what's good for me, but they're also interested in what's good for society in general. So I don't just trust that the AI might be effective, I also trust that it might be fair.
I asked Jack about the flip side of the coin, the context where you currently do not trust AI, the system and the people behind it.
So I wouldn't trust AI in circumstances where I don't know how it works, I don't know what it's for, and I suspect that it benefits the people developing the technology more than it benefits the people who might make use of the technology.
Our last question, when we're talking about trust in AI and the trustworthiness of system, what is the most important question we should be asking right now?
I think the most important question, the question that's currently being neglected, is who benefits?
As we've seen across this series, trust is the channel through which all new ideas travel, and trust shifts change our lives and societies in profound ways. For all the buzz around trust and technology, it's important to remember that trust is a human thing. Whether we're living in the age of local, institutional, distributed, or auto-sapient trust, we need to hold on to this idea that trust is ours to give. The goal as a society is not to build more trust, it's to give our trust carefully, to slow down a little and think, is this person, product, or piece of information, is it worthy of my trust? Because this question shapes our decisions and choices, and ultimately, who or what we trust determines who has power and control in our lives. I'm Rachel Botsman, and this has been The Trust Shift.
The Trust Shift was produced by Eliza Lomas. It was a BBC Audio Bristol production for Radio 4.
A Good Friday meditation with the Bishop of Newcastle, Helen Ann Hartley, reflecting on the ways that trees and wood can hold human pain, from the Sycamore Gap
The tree that once stood here was a place of shelter and strength.
to a storytelling chair made from a storm-felled tree,
There's a dignity about it and a presence that is restorative.
to the wood that became the cross of Christ.
I think perhaps that's why trees have such a powerful resonance in Christian spirituality.
Good Friday meditation. This afternoon at 3 on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
Our dystopian drama Silos continues in a quarter of an hour, but after the news, tensions mount at cricket practice in the Archers.
BBC News at 2 o'clock. The Democratic Unionist Party has announced that its leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, has stood down after being charged with historical sexual offences. The party said Mr Donaldson's membership had been suspended pending the outcome of a judicial process. The DUP has appointed the MP Gavin Robinson as its interim party leader. Our correspondent Jennifer O'Leary is in Belfast.
A 57-year-old woman, we can also say, has also been charged with aiding and abetting in connection with those alleged offences. Now, they were both arrested yesterday morning by PSNI detectives and questioned before being charged last night. They are due to appear in court in April.
The Metropolitan Police says it's continuing its investigation into potential offences linked to the Post Office over the Horizon IT scandal after the BBC revealed the company was told about flaws in its accounting system in 2017. Some politicians and former sub-postmasters want Scotland Yard to widen its investigation to take the new evidence into account. In an update this morning, the force said that it had interviewed 2 people under caution. A photography firm has apologised after parents at a primary school in Aberdeenshire were offered a class photo with an option excluding children with complex needs. Tempest Photography said it deeply regrets any upset caused. Aberdeenshire Council has also apologised, saying that Aboyne Primary School had not been involved in the decision, which it said had caused distress and hurt. Soldiers and officers are to be allowed to grow beards while serving in the British Army. It follows years of discussion around the Army's policy on facial hair. The change brings the Army into line with the RAF and the Royal Navy. And there have been reports of long queues at Dover as the Easter getaway begins. 2.6 million car journeys are expected to be made today, and a record number of people are planning to fly this weekend. Edmund King from the AA says that conditions on the roads could get worse tomorrow. BBC News.
Now on Radio 4, congratulations are in order for a Snell. But which one? It's the Archers.
That's right, Jolene. You're looking at the newly elected chairperson of Ambridge Cricket Club.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I think it's still sinking in, isn't it, Linda?
Needless to say, I am rather frustrated by the result.
Oh, come on now. You won fair and square.
I don't know how it happened, Julie.
Oh?
I fought valiantly to ensure that Robert triumphed.
But the cricket club members have spoken, which is why I'm treating Linda to a celebratory supper.
Oh, hello, Emma.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Are the walking group all right in there?
Yeah, they love having a playing with sports themselves.
Got the drinks already?
Yeah, I'm going to take the food on today.
Right-o.
I just wanted to check if George has been in.
Not yet.
He said he'd stop by and see you before next practice in Rochester.
George has joined the team now.
My brother strong-armed him into it.
Oh, I see.
Emma, I just brought a food order in for Robert and Linda. Should be on the house. Bottle of wine from there.
Right, I'll bring that through when it's ready.
Much obliged, Emma. On the house, Jolene. That's most generous.
I'll see you in a bit.
Well, we'd better grab a table then, dear. And thank you again for the bottle of wine, Jolene.
Looking at Sheila, I think she's on an island, isn't she? If I'm not wrong. I enviously tend to look at her social media accounts and then have to switch them off because she's usually doing something lovely. Anyway, I'm here with you until 4 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, I want to have a conversation with you. One that I've actually never had on LBC before. It's about whether or not you have red hair. If you're a red-haired person, or the parent perhaps of a red-haired person, would you pick up the phone? The reason is, at 3, I want to discuss with you whether or not you feel you have been discriminated against because of the colour of your hair. I'm asking you this because the reality TV star Paul Gorton has spoken very, very movingly about how he was bullied, called names, beaten up, as a result of his ginger hair, and he's now become an ambassador for the National Bullying Helpline. So, that at 3 o'clock. But first, Rishi Sunak has broken convention by announcing an Easter honours list and nominating one of the Conservative Party's biggest donors, Mohammed Mansour, for a knighthood. Now, interestingly, Labour's Annalise Dodds has been out this morning doing lots and lots and lots of interviews, but when she was asked whether or not Labour would prevent donors from being rewarded with gongs, she refused to rule it out. So, my question to you, very simple. Is it time to scrap the honours system? 0345 6060973. Sunak's surprise knighthood. So I'm telling you, the reason I'm laughing is because I've had this conversation quite a few times on my own show. And every time, the breaches in convention become ever more egregious and literally nothing happens. And this is quite a complicated conversation insofar as the phone calls I find most moving is when ordinary listeners will ring up and they'll say, my husband, my brother, my grandfather were awarded with an honour and they did some incredible stuff. And these calls are enormously moving. But I've just got to the point where I feel that our politicians have brought the honours system into such dishonour that we've just got to find a fresh system, a new way of honouring public service. Anyway, Sunak's surprise knighthood list includes Demis Hassabis, who is founder of artificial intelligence company DeepMind, filmmaking couple Christopher Nolan and Emma Thomas, who will receive a knighthood and a damehood, American businessman Ted Sarandos, the co-chief of Netflix, who was given an honorary knighthood. I always said, why? Anyway, last but not least, and this is the name that's caused most trouble for Rishi Sunak, the man who was the Tory party's biggest donor until Frank Hester came along with his 10 million quid. The Tory party's biggest donor with £5 million was Mohammed Mansour. If you've never heard of him, nor had I until this morning, I'd wager that the hoi polloi like us don't know much about Mr. Mansour because fundamentally we're not supposed to. Because us, the plebs, will never get near this kind of thing, will we? Anyway, the key bits you need to know about Mr. Mansour are as follows. He bunged the Tory 5 million quid last year. He was once a minister in the government of the Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak. What little I know of Mr. Mubarak is that he wasn't a great fan of democracy, was he? Could be wrong. Pick up the phone and correct me. What I couldn't figure out before coming on air was this. Did Mohamed Mansour bung the Tories £50 million in donations before or after HMRC launched an investigation into one of his subsidiary companies and found that that company owed us, the taxpayer, millions of pounds? I'm just going to put it out there. Labour, of course, seen as Gong's list. Wrong, but as I say, Anneliese Dodds wouldn't rule out Labour doing something similar. So, let me cut to the chase, so you don't have to have me rambling on, because I've got somebody who knows much more about it than me coming on in a second. I think the honours system is fundamentally corrupt, and it's been corrupted by a succession of politicians. By allowing political figures and party donors to become knights and dames, the entire thing has been brought into disrepute. I think it should be scrapped and it should be replaced with a non-political system of national awards for citizens that have earned an honour because of the service to their country. And I don't think that that award should be hierarchical, because the current honour system is hierarchical. I think that there should probably be some kind of independent panel that decides fairly and honestly which citizens of this country have served the people of this country. And I think we need to move away from a time where sucking up to politicians, or being a politician just doing your job, or being somebody who bungs loads of money to a political party, none of that should matter. Because I don't think that that is service to your country that deserves a specific award. I want to see the COVID nurses who looked after people that were dying. I want to see the bin men who've been bin men and women for 40 years, day in, day out, cleaning our streets. I want to see the scientists, the real innovators, the people that have created jobs, who didn't have to buy their gongs, getting awarded so we can celebrate them. That's my position on it. I may well be wrong, but do pick up the phone. Do you think it's time to scrap the honours system and replace it with something better? 0345 6060973, or you can text 84850. As I say, Sam Bright, investigative journalist and author of Bullingdon Club Britain, joins me on the line now. Sam, thank you for making time this afternoon. What do we know about Mr. Mansour?
Well, like you say, not a great deal other than the facts that you've outlined. We know that he's a massive donor to the Conservative Party and has now been awarded a knighthood. And, I mean, to be honest with you, like you say, it's entirely unsurprising, isn't it? The number of stories that we've seen in recent weeks, months, years of donors being awarded, not just honours. And I think this is the crucial point that I'd like to make. It's not just honours, not just knighthoods, but peerages as well. Nominations to the House of Lords. There are all sorts of baubles that can be handed out to these donors in exchange for their cash. And I think fundamentally we need to reevaluate our political donation system as a whole, because I think, as you say, very rightly, we should think about a new honour system. But the problem is that there will always be treats that can be offered by politicians to these wealthy individuals who just happen to donate to a political party. And as a result, I think that is a fundamentally corrupting relationship. You shouldn't be able to gain a certain status in British political life or economic life merely by the fact that you're a party political donor. And I think we've got to think about a new and different way of potentially funding our political parties, because I think the current system is broken.
What did you make of the fact that Anneliese Dodds wouldn't rule out Labour doing something similar?
I think it's shocking. As you know, I've written for many years about this process.
Yep.
First with PPE contracts, the fact that, as we know, billions of pounds worth of government contracts went to Tory mates and donors, and subsequently, you know, all these various ways in which donors are rewarded for their service to national life, which just happens to be service to the Conservative Party as well.
Labour have done the same. I've met some of them.
Well, yeah, this is the thing, that Labour have come out quite strongly, actually, and I've applauded them previously on this whole corruption tale. The fact that they've called for a COVID corruption commissioner to get back the public's money that was wasted on PPE. That's great. But frankly, it needs to put its money where its mouth is, in the very literal sense, and say that it's not going to take part in this corrupt system anymore, that it's not going to play the same games that the Tories have. And if it does, then fundamentally it's continuing a broken system that people are fed up with. People are absolutely fed up with it, and it needs to change on day one, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. I also don't think anybody totally understands it. I was doing straw polling in the office. Admittedly, there are only 4 of us in, so straw poll of 4. That's bank holiday staffing for you. And actually, I was sort of asking, does anybody understand what the hierarchy of all these honours is, and what the distinction is between, as you have so clearly put it, between a peerage and being named, being made a knight or a dame? And actually, by and large, nobody really got it. And for me anyway, Sam, it was sort of reflective of how this is a world that really does not apply to most people, does it?
Completely. I think I would urge your listeners, if they're interested in finding out more, there was a great series of investigations by Open Democracy, actually, a few years ago, that